Okay. Well, I realized that was probably not the traditional way of opening up Newman Lumen, which I'll explain all that in a little bit. And I realize I'm probably not wearing what you would normally expect from your speaker to this morning, or however what you normally would expect out of me. But as you'll learn through our time together today, I'm going to step out from behind the stand and share a little bit about me. But there's more about that come the end of this. It would be selfish of me to proceed without talking about transitions and resilience that I've experienced without stopping and taking a moment this morning to lift up our thoughts and prayers in a moment of silence for way too many families, teachers, community members that are this morning facing the unthinkable impact and change of losing a child after yesterday's deadly massacre. For the past 9+ years, I have run in the Valentine's Day Massacre Marathon. I've always been hesitant about wearing the hoodie from that race in public because of the name of the race and what is on the front of the sweatshirt. But today, I might be judged by people, and that's okay. They don't understand my reasoning. I'm gonna boldly put that on and bring attention to this senseless act. It is time, as Holly Starr just sang to us, to rise up. Please pause with me. Thank you. I am going to ask that you bear with me through our time together this morning. I'm not a public speaker, so I'll probably do a lot of reading, nor do I like the spotlight being on me. Definitely more comfortable being behind the scenes, deciphering a budget, planning the details of a large event, or organizing someone's calendar, instead of having the focus on me and what I have to say. So much so that when I initially received the email asking me to participate, my immediate thought was absolutely not. I have nothing to share that would possibly interest anyone. Meanwhile, I just finished reading this a little while ago. This is about 11 pages long, and I promise I ended up deleting a lot of it. I didn't immediately respond to the email because I wanted to think about how I was going to politely decline the invitation. I do some of my best thinking while swimming and running, so off to the pool I went. Well, lo and behold, while I was swimming, suddenly the topic I'm going to share and the words started flowing. If I only had a pen to write it all down at that moment. By the time I was able to get to a computer to type it up and respond with my decision, I talked myself back out of it and was again back to figuring out my response to decline the invitation. I thought it would be best to sleep on it and respond the next morning. So off to the gym I went early that morning for my normal run, and guess what happens? The words started flowing again, and again, I did not have anything to write it down. Figuring this happened quite easily 2 times, I thought I might want to give it a little more consideration before so quickly declining. That night, my son shared with me a video clip of a song that I'll share with you at the end of today. It was extremely timely and encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone and share a little bit about me. My hope through our conversation today is that it will encourage and inspire others to embrace the transition zones in their lives, but then to step out and declare, this is me. A brief bit about me. I was born and raised on Nantucket Island, Massachusetts, small island about 30 miles off the coast of Cape Cod. It's a very small community, particularly during the winter and the off-season, and I come from a very large, there's 7 siblings, family, and a large extended family. My parents have always wanted the best from us, and expectations were set high very early on. During my senior year of high school, I received a postcard from this little school in North Carolina that no one had ever heard of in our area, except, of course, in the crossword puzzles. Based solely on the postcard, I told my parents I would be attending that school, to which they promptly replied, no. You see, I had a sibling that had attended school in Maryland and was incredibly homesick early on. At the time, they were hesitant the same thing would happen, rightfully so. Thinking for sure that I wouldn't get in, they told me I'd have to be accepted before they would travel to look at the school. Fast forward a few months. I get accepted, I receive an invitation to the honors program, and I receive a call from the coaching staff of the football team asking me to be a manager of the team. At that point, my parents had to at least allow me to go for a school visit, which of course we did on your typical Carolina blue day in the middle of April. Considering we had just traveled from the still cold, damp, dreary New England, we were all sold the moment we walked onto Elon's beautiful campus, And like they say, the rest is history. 4 months later, my father and I loaded my car and drove down the East Coast, my very first time driving on the highway, to North Carolina, where I would move into what I still consider to be the best residence hall and room on campus, West 216. That, my friends, was what I would call a major transition, but one of the best ones. Not all transitions in life are negative. Please be mindful that this was long before the influx of students from the Northeast had ever occurred here at Elon. So much so that on move-in day, everyone used to gather around the fountain with other students from their home states. You'd have a North Carolina sign, a Virginia sign. Nope, not Massachusetts. We were all grouped together with New England. And there weren't many of us standing there. On a side note, my parents that fought so hard against me attending Elon, because they were afraid of me being homesick, quickly fell in love with the place. My mother was one of the school's biggest supporters in my hometown, constantly promoting it to high school seniors, but I think we may have only missed 1 or 2 years since I started coming, with students coming in from Nantucket. They've never missed a homecoming in the past 28 years and absolutely fell in love with the place. I mentioned that word transition when I spoke about moving to Elon freshman year. Let me explain a little something about what you witnessed at the start of my talk today and how it relates to transition. Sarah and I are members of a running team called the Red Hot Mamas. We participate in a variety of different road races, some of which are relay races, and in those we have the ritual that you saw happen. They occur at the EZs, or what they call the exchange zones, and the transition zones along the course. There's nothing better than when your legs are tired in the middle of the night and you're ready for your portion to be done for a few hours than when you get to see the sign along the road that says easy ahead with flashing lights on it. You know you're almost there. Your team will be cheering you on, ready to support you. On your approach, we yell red hot coming in. And the best sound you hear back in the dark of the night is red hot, red hot. You know someone is waiting there for you, excited to see you, there to support you. We trade off runners at that point, and there's always another runner assigned to you to check on you, know exactly what you will need in that moment. There's transition zones, which are a little bit larger, where you can actually stop and take a moment to rest, regroup, and do whatever you need before having to go back out there. These are the areas where you may stop to take a little more time. This morning, I'd like to share a couple lessons learned along the road during some of the EZs and transition zones of my life that I hope can apply to anyone from first-year students to colleagues, and what it means to find a place to call home and a place to belong. Back to freshman year, it was a normal start to any college experience for first-year students. I ended up on the best hall. We're all still very close, have a separate Facebook chat group, and still get together at homecomings. Back before cohorts and LLCs were common terms in residence life, the second floor of West was actually a dedicated teaching fellows, leadership fellows, and honors floor. Looking back, I see how living in that cohort created an incredible lifelong connection to so many people. I truly have a special fondness for that residence hall. I've never missed greeting the incoming first-year students that are moving into 216 on move-in day. Prior to attending Elon, I knew nothing about Greek life and had never heard of it, so it was not on my radar, not something we discussed in my house growing up. When I mentioned to my parents that I registered to participate in recruitment, it was met with a lot of pushback. They were not happy with my decision. I proceeded to write a letter to them explaining that I knew they were not happy with my decision, but I knew what I was doing, and I hoped they would end up supporting me. Mom kept that letter, and years later gave it back to me. I still have it. At the time, I had my heart set on one organization, ironically the one that was most certainly courting my roommate. On a Saturday night of recruitment, you could only be invited back to at most 2 organizations. However, I received one invitation back, and it certainly was not the one I wanted. I immediately had plans to drop out, but was encouraged to at least stick through prep night which I did much to my displeasure. As soon as it was over, I dropped out. Maybe Mom and Dad were right after all. Later the next day, after bids had been handed out, I received a visit from my counselor with what was called a SNAP bid, or rather a bid from the organization that I had decided to drop. After several days of consideration and angst, I decided to give it a try, and looking back, I'm glad that I did. This was definitely one of those exchange zones in life when I was at a crossroads and needed to rely on my family and friends because the course of my college years was changing. I had a plan crafted for myself when I focused on only one organization, and when that fell through, I needed to take a moment at this EZ to regroup. If you're a first-year student and you find yourself in this same situation, I understand. I'm here to tell you, there's another side to it. You will still have a great experience here at Elon. Your course may just look a little different than you originally planned. On to spring of sophomore year. It's a typical spring semester, finishing up taking most of my core classes before getting into classes for my major, which at this point I still hadn't determined. The newness of my first year of school is gone. I don't have the excitement of the freshmen that are pledging. I'm taking basic courses and not quite into my major courses like the juniors, nor do I have the anxiety and excitement of the graduating seniors. Needless to say, I have hit, as my mother liked to call it, the spring semester sophomore slump. That alone is a challenge to navigate, but then the unthinkable happened. A fellow football teammate, my partner on a project in my Religion 101 class with Dr. Pugh, was killed in a car accident right around the corner from here, along the train tracks next to the Elon Police Department on February 28, 1992. In just 2 short weeks, it'll be 26 years. And every day I drive over those train tracks and still look to the right. Needless to say, this was another one of those moments when I had to run into that exchange zone and turn to my Elon family, my teammates, my sorority sisters, remember that group I wasn't so sure I wanted to be a part of, for their support. As part of all this, my grades dropped, which in turn meant so did my honor scholarship. Now trust me, coming from a family of 7 kids, where finances did not always come easily, the last thing you want to do is call home and tell them you received a notice that your scholarship was in jeopardy. That summer, I had to dig deep, put in extra hours, and work hard to earn additional money to help support the loss of my scholarship. But I learned a lot during that experience about unconditional love, about bouncing back and pushing forward. It certainly wasn't easy, but it was an exchange zone where I needed to stop for a moment, embrace the support of others. But on the other side of all this, we were able to create and establish the program that is now called Safe Rides. It was a little different back then. We used our own personal cars. It was before cell phones, where we used the dorm room phones that we had, but we were resilient and willing to do whatever it took to seek a positive outcome to this tragedy. Fast forward many years, I've been working for the same company, the same department for 17 years when I received a notice that I would no longer be able to work from home and would need to start commuting to maintain my job. If I chose not to accept the offer to commute, then I'd lose my job, and they would not owe me anything, because technically they weren't letting me go. They had offered me another position. At the time, that was not going to be the best decision for my family. I had to make the tough decision of leaving my job, the only thing I had known for 17 years. Now what? This was certainly a major transition. I had worked since the age of 5. Yes, my dad had us doing odd jobs in his print shop. The mentality of working hard was ingrained in us very early on. So to suddenly be without a job and nowhere to go when I woke up on that first Monday morning in January was extremely unsettling. This time period was certainly not going to be a simple exchange zone where I can briefly pause and immediately start running again. It was clear this was going to be a greater transition period for me. Sometimes these periods are about stepping back, maybe unbecoming who we thought we were. This was now an opportunity to change the course of my life and I wanted to really examine what would be next. The definition of resilience is the ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. Resilience is certainly what I learned, but yet again, through my connection to Elon, my constant desire over the years to be able to come back to what I call home and pursue a career here, I applied for and was hired to become an assistant in the student life department, something I probably never would have pursued had I not been confronted with this major transition. I've not always done a good job embracing the easy times in transition zones. In September of this past year, I competed in the Blue Ridge Relays, a 6-person all-female team. In 36 hours, we ran 200-plus miles along the Blue Ridge Parkway, North Carolina. My total distance over the 6 segments was 42 miles. I trained hard, including early morning runs at Morrow Mountain State Park, leaving Burlington at 3:45 in the morning to run up the mountain at sunrise and return home before my family was up and started their day. One of my segments was 10 miles up Grandfather Mountain, my entire focus during training. The weather was perfect. Grandfather was my 3rd segment, and I felt great. I managed to knock that leg out of the park. I felt so high when I reached the top of the mountain. I can remember running into that easy and never slowing down, almost plowing over our next runner. I was on cloud 9. While it's great to be able to celebrate your accomplishments, there are also easy and transition zones placed along the course of your life for a reason, the same way as why we have them during the race. I was so excited about what I had just done that despite the constant encouragement from my teammates to relax, rest, and rehydrate, I didn't take that time needed. My failure to do so ended up working against me. Because of this, I ended up medically dehydrated and performed poorly the next couple of segments because I was completely out of sorts. Learned a lot from that race. I learned that transition zones in life are placed there for a reason. It is a time of rejuvenation, reflection, rehydration of whatever it is that you need at that moment. Embrace them, learn from them, and then move on. Being resilient, though, is not always about our story. Sometimes it's about being there in those easy and transition zones of life for others. When Zachary was almost 2 years old, I formed a small play group for us to meet with on a regular basis. None of the parents knew each other. I had no idea, nor could I have ever imagined how it would all play out. Sorry, Elizabeth. Was the only connection at the time. Since then, this group has been through divorces, deaths, medical challenges, everything you could possibly think of. But we're still together. The kids are all very different, yet very similar, and will go to bat for each other in a heartbeat. This group has been there in some of the darkest times and through all of the celebrations of life. I can't imagine navigating parenthood without them. Sometimes it is about intentionally placing those people in your life to be there to catch you, to hold up that mirror and tell you to move on, and other times it's your job to do it for them. I often relate my experience since becoming a member of the Elon family in 1990 until now, much like the life of an oak tree. I was just a mere acorn upon my arrival in August of 1990. But since then, I've been able to firmly plant my roots in this community, grow stronger each day through the constant support of so many other members of this family. Sure, I've gone through many seasons of having to shed my leaves, but there has always been new growth that has followed, making me stronger than I was before. Sometimes we all lose our way and we forget who we truly are. But thankfully, God inspires people around us to hold up a mirror during those transition periods for us to see who we have become and to look carefully at that reflection. Sometimes we need to be that person for others that steps up in those transition moments and holds up a mirror for them. Things I thought were a sidetrack or mistake, like a recent injury that I had in early January. I had trained hard for my biggest race ever, and I fell hard early on in that race. I chipped my hip, and I've been sidelined for 6 weeks, not knowing what was going to be next. Would I be able to run again? But I am. I'm listening, and I was able to this weekend. They're all a part of the journey, pieces coming together to create something bigger. Each and every chapter has served a purpose, even the ones that have felt dark and lonely, because during those moments, I was able to find the strength and love and faith, much like Holly Starr shared with us in her song at the beginning, "Rise Up. Don't give up. This is not the end. You've got to remember that deep in your soul there is a fire, and it is burning through the rain. Quiet that fear and focus your eyes, because courage comes in the darkest hour." I am so thankful to many of you that have been there during those transition moments. I hope you've been able to see the common thread through many of these moments of transition have been my connection to Elon, the people that I've met along the way here and made lifelong connections with that I now consider my Elon family. You'll notice I'm wearing something called momentum bracelets. It's very rare that you'll ever see me without at least one of these on. Each one was given to me at a different point in my life over the past couple of years, but they're constant reminders to me that easies and transition zones don't only occur when we are young and naive, they occur every day throughout our entire lives. We just need to be open to paying attention to them, embracing them when it is time, and then, as my bracelets indicate, digging deep, staying strong, being brave, and moving on because you can and you will. Are you approaching an easy right now? Or is it a transition zone where you need to stop and rest and reflect? Do you have that support crew cheering you into the easy that's ready to support you, but also there to tell you it's time to head back out onto the course? In the spirit of transitions, I would like for us to move into the McBride gathering space to close out our time together by watching a clip from The Greatest Showman. It's the video that my son had me watch the night before I was getting ready to decline my invitation to speak to all of you. After watching and reflecting on it, I quickly determined that it was time to step out. While I know it might be tempting to quickly slip out to that next meeting, I believe you'll be encouraged and inspired if you'll just stick around for a moment and watch this. Please join me.